On May 28th, 2026, the Blue Origin New Glenn rocket has exploded during a static fire test at Cape Canaveral. It was launched on Complex 36, and a static test, the rocket's engines were ignited while the vehicle is fixed to the pad itself. So we're going to draw that. So we have the rocket, and it was ignited, and it was fixed to the pad itself. Okay? So pretty much to that extent, the vehicle is fixed to the pad to verify the systems before the actual launch itself. But something happened into one of the boosters. When it ignited, it had a catastrophic failure where it pretty much blew up. The blast produced a massive fireball, and a shockwave was detected by the USGS seismograph up to 135 miles, registering as a 2.5 magnitude equivalent of that. The explosion destroyed the first stage, however, by the 7 methane fueled BE4 engines. So, yes, these thrusters, these boosters, were powered by methane. So there is no official root cause of the problem yet because this is a brand new thing that happened because this was last week. So to understand what the cause is, it's still under investigation, but we can theorize what could be the root cause because this is very common on most engines and rockets and mostly rockets explosions, especially in these test runs. Initial observations suggest that the failure originated in the engine section in its first stage as it ignited. So yeah, so as it ignited, there was a catastrophic failure, but there's still no official root cause of what actually happened that caused the failure, because maybe it would be a system malfunction or it could be something happened in the fuel. I don't know. But no one was injured. No one died. All the crew that was working on this whole ignition system, the crew, the mission control, nobody was injured. No one died. There were no casualties. No outside people were injured. You know, people that are watching the rocket up and close. No one was injured. No one died. No casualties happened. So this was a very lucky that there was no casualties involved in the explosion. But it did cause a lot of damage in that radius. It caused a 2.5 magnitude earthquake. The specific test on May 28th was part of a preparation for the NG4 Blue Origin's fourth New Glenn flight that was actually be scheduled for Thursday, June 4th. The mission was intended to carry about 48 Amazon low Earth orbit internet satellites into low Earth orbit. So yeah, that was originally planned to send satellites into low Earth orbit. You know, to use like for faster internet. You know, track Amazon locations. You know, Amazon. You know, buying things from Amazon, right? You know, that's what these satellites were going to be doing. Pretty much, in other words, the rocket's purpose was proposed that day to not launch a payload into space, but it was using to validate its engines and systems in control test. You know, because again, this Thursday was supposed to be an official launch for the New Glenn to launch these satellites up into low Earth orbit, but fortunately, that catastrophic explosion happened, and this new plan is now scrubbed until, again, something gets cleaned up and then something has to happen and be redesigned for a future mission. But to make things worse, that this may also put a delay into the Artemis program by sending the next generation of humans back to the moon. And because of the explosion itself, then the moon landing in 2028 in the Artemis 3 program in 2027 will most likely be delayed because of this failure. So we're going to figure out what the initial cause of this rocket itself, but there is no official cause. Well, we can guess what actually happened.
So pretty much I created a diagram. So ignore the crappy drawing of the Statue of Liberty. But to put that in perspective, the Statue of Liberty stands at 151 feet tall, or 46 meters tall. The Blue Origin rocket itself that was used was only 70 meters tall at 230 feet tall. And it contains the fuel tanks, the two BE3 engines, and then you have the 7 BE4 engines carrying 3.8 million pounds of force. And these were fueled by methane. So understanding what the explosion, if it's what caused it, well, some aerospace analysis has speculated that the possible cause could include the methane or the liquid oxygen tanks. So a rocket itself is both hydrogen and liquid oxygen. So liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. So something happened that probably a O-ring had probably failed, and then it leaked all this unstable light fuel, probably the hydrogen, into
one of the boosters. And hydrogen being as light as it is, well, hydrogen is unstable and it caused it to explode and cause the rocket itself to explode because of a failure with an O-ring. Or an engine turbo pump had failed. And engine turbo pumps are located in the, so in a liquid fuel rocket engine, a turbo pump is mounted directly into the engine's feed system, typically at the base of the combustion chamber itself. Within this pump side, connected to the propellant tanks and its turbine side powered by hot gas from a pre-burner or a combustor. So that's what could be also a good cause. Or just a valve malfunction. There's probably valves, that direct fuel into the combustion chamber. So there's a valve and then a valve problem over here too. Sending fuel into the combustion chambers to ignite and then eventually thrust. Or a ground support equipment issue during the fueling station. So you have to fuel all the tanks up here. So there was a possibility that the calculations of fueling wasn't accounted for in the refueling process. And without the correct calculations, again, you exceed so much pressure, and that would probably cause your rocket to completely explode. But again, these are possibilities of what may have caused this. But again, there's no ground root that may have caused the actual explosion itself. But these are possibilities that most common. The reason why most rockets explode the way they do is because there's probably an issue with the O-ring. The O-ring probably backed itself off during there's a hydraulic pump. There's a cryo link, or there's something that went wrong that probably backed the O-ring right off, and then the O-ring just backed itself off, causing the leaks of hydrogen and a little bit of the oxygen. And most of that fuel had leaked into the chambers, And then again, like a bomb, as you put the hydrogen into that chamber and mixing it with the other stuff, again, hydrogen being light and unstable causes it to explode. Or it's a simple valve may have malfunction, feeding fuel into these chambers, into these engines as it ignited. So something wasn't built properly in the valve system to send the fuel into the boosters. Ground support equipment issues, engine startup, you know, the fuel wasn't accounted for, and then during when it ignited, a spark came in, and then again the rocket exploded because of a single missed spark in one of the boosters. So again, that's just possible causes, because there's no possible cause just yet. So with the four main speculated possible causes with what happened to the Blue Origin that happened on Thursday, but most likely and it's very common with most of rocket explosions, it's dealing with the O-rings that are probably failing, or a valve had completely stuck open, or something happened, or something wasn't accounted for during the fuel process. All of these could be speculations what may have caused the explosion itself, but I can't tell which one will be the main cause, because again, there's a lot of speculations, and if we get more of the ground root, it can probably say a completely different thing. It cannot be the main four: the methane, liquid oxygen leak, an engine turbo pump, a valve malfunction, or a ground support. Something can tell something different. But again, these are the four main possible common ways that most rockets often fail, is because of the four main stuff that I just mentioned. But to go with the gut, most of the problems that we've seen from like Challenger or something like that, from past rocket explosions, maybe the O-ring may have failed, and hydrogen being unstable, hydrogen exploded, and again, these are speculations, these are theories, but thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. And if there's any more stuff about the Blue Origin's failure, I'm going to probably do a video about that and kind of update you guys on what is the possible main cause of the explosion itself. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.